Good morning, evening, afternoon, and welcome to Plato's Cave on WZR from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. It's home to fresh, relatively uncensored ideas and conversations in the chat room. We've got 31 people in there right now, so come on in if you can. And it's also a good place to get your merch. All kinds of merch, in fact. The station is not beholden to anyone, but does require your support. Real thing, that is. Please donate or subscribe or buy some of that awesome merch I just spoke about. It all helps, right? If you like this kind of content, right? This is show number 9. I say show number 9. Time flies when you question your reality. I love that, right? Catch the Cave on air. Oh, sorry, I lied to you. This is show number 11. Holy moly! I do apologize. This is show number 11. I just checked my records. I'm living in the past. Clearly, my apologies. Catch the Cave on air, online, on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. And I do have to get myself one of those Grace Tabletop Digital Radios. Hey, why not join the club? Subscribe to the archives. Well, it's actually free at the moment. Just go to the Freedom Slips archives on the website. It's the third link on the top. And you can check out all the hosts' shows. It goes back quite a few years too. Please feel free to do that anytime. But I would really love it if you joined the chat. I promise you, any questions, if I can, if I see them, if I can answer them, I will. It's really quite lively. Before I start, though, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which I broadcast. Here in Australia, in my specific area, it's the Darug people. I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. More so now than ever before, I want to say. I've noticed while I was listening to Revolution Radio, waiting for my show to come on. Waiting for me to broadcast. Really, that's what that is. I've been listening, and I'd like to make a request of everybody out there, both the hosts as well as the listeners. Can we stop calling those people the ruling class or the ruling elite or the elite in general? Can we please call them what they are? Parasites. Dave and I on the Shiny Side Out have made that decision a few shows ago. Can we just all call them parasites, please? It makes it so much easier to understand what they are. Because both ruling class and elite, or even ruling elite, has fairly positive connotations, right? There's nothing positive about those people. It's a stretch to call them people, in my opinion. But again, that's nothing there. So again, it's just an appeal. If you can, great. If you don't feel comfortable, that's okay. I understand. We all love the leader. But if you can, then please go ahead. Now we spent a little bit of time in quantum land, and we're gonna go back there again, and then we're gonna look at some really strange experiments that have been run next week. This week we are going to talk about the potentially holographic nature of our universe. Because we talked about the box, right? That we're all in the prison, the fake reality. Even though it's not really, you can't really call it a fake reality, because it's real enough when you're in it, right? Your senses that you have access to can't tell the difference, because they're designed to function in this particular reality, right? Really important to understand that it can damage us. It can damage our essence to be here, right? In this reality matrix, even from a multiversal perspective. And then each instance of the multiverse where this prison exists, the double slit experiment or similar things will collapse the quantum probability curve. Quantum decoherence happens, and the one reality comes out on top. Ordo archeo, de pluribus unum. If you're American, you should start reading your money. There's a lot of stuff on there that the founding fathers put in as Easter eggs, little bits of information, if you will. Okay, really important to understand what we're doing. Really important to understand why people have done the things they've done. Why are there so many obelisks everywhere? Why? Pyramids everywhere. Lotus plants, pine cones everywhere. Thank you, Megalogos. Awesome. Thank you so much for the sound check. No, all good, mate. All good. I was hoping it was okay. I was gonna go ahead anyway and keep talking. But yeah. So why are these symbols? They're all around us. You know, and some of them are hidden in plain sight. Right? Have you ever looked at the street map of Washington D.C.? What the streets actually look like in Washington D.C.? It's really interesting. It's an owl. Yeah, I know, right? What does that mean? Well, we'll get to that. But it's a thing. So all of these clues are all around us, right? It's and you know you don't see them. You don't understand what you're looking at, and that's okay. It's not your fault. You haven't been educated that way, right? And it's again, it's just something that we'll remedy. But it's really quite astounding. I mean, if you know what you're looking at this, right? And right, the middle of that owl is it's called what's this called? Scott Circular Northwest. If you take it as your reference point, you can quite easily see the owl, right? The White House is sort of in the body of it. Again, it does help if you look at the map. And none of these things are happening by accident. These are not accidents. This is not something that just happens. There's no such thing as an accident or coincidence when it comes to city planning, especially. Right? Except Sydney. Sydney, Australia, looks like somebody threw up over a map and then wiped it off the dirty, filthy sleeve. That's what the map of Sydney looks like. Okay, Melbourne, Canberra, Adelaide, Brisbane, nice and orderly, planned, like Manhattan in many ways. Sydney, no, not even close. So maybe there's a city out there that has absolutely no planning whatsoever in it. But yeah, so just look at the map, and again, like I said, look at the reference point needs to be, like I said, what's it called again? Let me say, Scott Circular Northwest. That's your reference point. Okay? Just look at that and see what you think. Is it a revelation? I hope so. It's really interesting. Okay, so all these clues all around us that something isn't quite right. Now, not everybody has all the answers, and even the founding fathers, who I think got their knowledge from Knights Templar, surviving Knights Templar, obviously European Freemasons as well, and they preserved some of the Knights Templar knowledge, and a lot of that was lost. It was lost. And now, not the oral tradition. I mean, that still lived on, but the actual artifacts. The actual artifacts are lost. Okay, which is really quite interesting. And they haven't been found yet. The Masons are still looking for that which was lost. If you're a Mason, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? And if not, that's all I'm going to say about that. Because some people have to do their own research. I think. Well, people need to do their own research. Okay. Now, let's look at the nature of the universe we live in. Could it be a holographic universe? Could we be? What if our existence is a holographic projection of another flat version of you living on a two-dimensional surface at the edge of this universe? In other words, are we real, or are we quantum interactions on the edges of the universe? And is that just as real anyway? Remember, we talked about when you stop becoming you. At what point do you stop becoming you? Right? We decided you actually don't stop becoming you. Not that you know anyway. But you're still you, no matter what happens to you. Your legs and arms could be cut off. Maybe only the head. Maybe only the brain is left. Maybe only that what matters in the brain is left. What makes you you? What makes you you? Your hands, your feet, your skin, your hair? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's a lot more complex than that, like we discussed last time. Anyway, whether we actually live in a hologram is being hotly debated right now, believe it or not. But it is becoming clear that looking at phenomena through a holographic lens could be key to solving some of the most perplexing problems in physics, including the physics that reigned before the Big Bang. What gives particles mass? A theory of quantum gravity. And I'm actually a member of the quantum physics group on Facebook, which I found fascinating. So, but what happens is they post all these new articles up, and it's really awesome because I like to be updated on these kinds of things. And now they're thinking, oh, maybe there was no Big Bang. Maybe there was no Big Bang. Maybe the universe contracts and then expands again, right? Contract, expands. Contracts to a tiny, tiny point and then expands again to infinite point. Meaning, of course, that the universe doesn't have a beginning and doesn't have an end. It just goes on, which makes a lot more sense. Because when you have a beginning, then there has to be something before the beginning, but you don't know what that is. Whereas if you have a universe that just keeps on going, albeit in maybe different shapes and sizes, it just keeps on going. Right, and that's really one of the issues that we face at this moment. We've got a lot of theories, but none of the theories explain everything. We had string theory. I didn't really like that too much. Maybe it's sort of fallen out of favor. It's now sort of fallen in disfavor rather. Then we talked about dark matter and dark energy. Now, why did we need dark matter and dark energy? Well, simply because we couldn't explain why gravity was so weak. What was driving the expansion of the universe? Right? What? We didn't know. Clearly, it had to be something because it was, it seems to be expanding. So there's this dark force, this dark energy that's driving it out. And then there was not enough matter in the universe, based on the theories and models that we create. Not enough matter. So where is it? It's dark. It's dark matter. 98% of the matter in the universe is dark. What? That's a lot of matter gone missing. Maybe 96%. I get those numbers wrong. So yeah, we came up with all these crutches because our models didn't make sense without them. It's really quite amazing. And now we have a problem with light speed. Einstein said, no, light speed that's the speed limit for the universe. Thank you very much. Nothing can go faster because if it did, your mass trends toward infinite. So any object that is traveling near or at speed, if it's at the speed of light, your mass becomes infinite. If it's near the speed of light, the mass becomes fairly large. But as you approach the speed of light, it trends toward infinite, which is impossible. But that's the math. That is the math, right? But then we have entanglement, and we discussed entanglement, how it happens. How do you entangle things? What does it actually mean? What it means is there's an information exchange that seems to happen instantaneously, no matter how far the particles are apart. And that has been proven experimentally. Right? So this is not a theory. This is not just some kind of mathematical formula. We actually have, and I'll bring those experiments to you. But we have proven that in a tangled state, these particles exchange information instantaneously. So if something happens to one particle, the direction of spin or whatever changes at the same time, in the same moment. No lapse time, no interval. The other particle, the entangled particle, has the same spin change. That's impossible. Now people will argue, oh well, nothing really traveled. It's only information. Well, information is something too. Right? I mean, if information could travel instantaneously, then we should be able to send signals instantaneously. There should be no limit to how fast we can transmit anything anywhere, right? And if you can, transmit information, then why can't you transmit matter? So after all, matter is energy, and energy is matter, isn't that? E equals mc squared says, because energy equals mass times the square of light. It doesn't matter which way you solve this equation. It turns out that energy and mass seem to be the same thing. That's really interesting. Of course, time and space don't make any sense in that scenario either. Because if there's instantaneous communication between two particles, entangled particles, there can't be any space. And therefore there's no time, because what is time but motion through space? If everything froze today, right now, in this moment, any motion in the universe, that'd be it. There'd be no time, because nothing would move, and even our thoughts would stop potentially. At least in this matrix, because nothing is moving. Nothing is moving. Right? Okay. Very interesting stuff. In 1982, at the University of Paris, a research team led by physicist Alain Aspect. That's such a cool Bond villain name. Alain Aspect have come to kill James Bond. Performed what may turn out to be one of the most important experiments of the 20th century. Aspect's experiment was related to the EPR experiment, a consciousness experiment which had been devised by Albert Einstein and his colleagues Polsky and Rosen in order to disprove quantum mechanics on the basis of the Pauli exclusion principle. That's the EPR experiment, contradicting special relativity. Aspect and his team discovered that under certain circumstances, subatomic particles, such as electrons, are able to instantaneously communicate with each other, regardless of the distance separating them. It doesn't matter whether they're 10 feet or 10 billion miles apart. Somehow, each particle always seemed to know what the other was doing. This feat violates Einstein's long-held tenet that no communication can travel faster than the speed of light, which is tantamount to breaking the time barrier. Now I feel like a Time Lord. Doctor Who to the rescue. Step into my TARDIS. Oh, I would love a TARDIS. I really would. This daunting prospect has caused some physicists to try to come up with elaborate ways to explain away Aspect's findings. But it has inspired others to offer even more radical explanations. University of London physicist David Bohm, for example, believes Aspect's findings imply that objective reality does not exist. Doesn't exist. That despite its apparent solidity, the universe is at heart a phantasm, a gigantic and splendidly detailed hologram. To understand why Bohm makes this startling assertion, one must first understand a little about holograms. A hologram is a three-dimensional photograph made with the aid of a laser. To make a hologram, the object to be photographed is first bathed in the light of a laser beam. Then a second laser beam is bounced off the reflected light of the first, and the resulting interference pattern, the area where the two laser beams, sort of commingle, is captured on film. It's an ingenious process, but pretty straightforward. When the film is developed, it looks like a meaningless swirl of light and dark lines. But as soon as the developed film is illuminated by another laser beam, a three-dimensional image of the original object appears. The three-dimensionality of such images is not the only remarkable characteristic of holograms. If a hologram of a rose is cut in half and then illuminated by a laser, each half will still be found to contain the eye image of the rose. Even if the halves are divided again, each snippet of film will always be found to contain a smaller but intact version of the original image. Unlike normal photographs, every part of a hologram contains all the information possessed by the whole. The whole in every part nature of a hologram provides us with an entirely new way of understanding organization and order. For most of its history, Western science has labored under the bias that the best way to understand a physical phenomenon, whether a frog or an atom, is to dissect it and study its respective parts. Let's chop it up and see what we learn. A hologram, though, teaches us that some things in the universe may not lend themselves to this approach. If we try to take apart something constructed holographically, we will not get the pieces of which it is made. We will only get smaller holes. Yeah? Now, this method, the scientific method of cutting up things and insisting on empirical sciences, etc., it works really, really well for a lot of stuff in nature, in the world. It really does. But it doesn't work for a whole bunch of other stuff, which we like to call the paranormal. Kooky and spooky. Not really. We just don't know how to study it properly. Well, some of us do. And it terrifies us that there's something out there which eludes the grasp of our erudite scholars and eminent scientists. It's really scary for these people to admit there's something they simply cannot grasp. What they do is they say, oh, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. No, nothing. Sorry. Nothing to see here. Move along. Of course, these things do exist. These phenomena do exist. They're there. Okay? We've got physical evidence for them. We can't study them. We can't take them to a lab and cut them apart and look at them with a microscope. Some we can. But sometimes these phenomena that we're studying, they study us right back, or they don't cooperate, or they don't, do the same thing twice. Even if all the other circumstances are the same, we can't get the phenomenon or the phenomena to cooperate. Now, this insight suggested to Bohm another way of understanding aspects discovery. Bohm believes the reason subatomic particles are able to remain in contact with one another, regardless of the distance that separates them, is not because they are sending some sort of mysterious signal back and forth, but because the separateness is an illusion. Let that sink in for a second. He argues that at some deeper level of reality, such particles are not individual entities, but are actually extensions of the same fundamental something. To enable people to better visualize what he means, Bohm offers the following illustration, and I love this, I really do. Imagine an aquarium containing a fish. Imagine also that you are unable to see the aquarium directly, and your knowledge about it and what it contains comes from two television cameras, one directed at the aquarium's front and the other directed at its side. As you stare at the two television monitors, you might assume that the fish on each of the screens are separate entities. After all, because the cameras are set at different angles, each of the images will be slightly different. But as you continue to watch the two fish, you will eventually become aware that there's a certain relationship between them. When one turns, the other also makes a slightly different but corresponding turn. When one faces the front, the other always faces toward the side. If you remain unaware of the full scope of the situation, you might even conclude that the fish must be instantaneously communicating with one another. But this is clearly not the case. This, says Bohm, is precisely what is going on between the subatomic particles in aspects experiment. According to Bohm, the apparent faster-than-light connection between subatomic particles is really telling us that there's a deeper level of reality that we're simply not privy to, a more complex dimension beyond our own that is analogous to the aquarium. Now think about that for a second, right? I've always maintained that we don't really understand the nature of reality. We're good at describing things. We're good at looking at nature and finding out how a heart beats and what makes a frog jump and all these wonderful things. But ultimately, we really don't know what's going on, right? All our laws and and theories and hypotheses, they're really just crutches to help us live our lives, thinking that we have some modicum of control. Really, illusion, but at least we can cling to that illusion of control. We understand the universe. We're discovering its secrets. We're wrestling away all the mysteries. Well, no, we're not. Not really, because we don't understand it. I don't think we've got the faculties to understand it. Not in the prison state that we're in. Not being imprisoned in these flashbacks, right? But if that doesn't make any sense to you, go back to the to the other shows of Plato's Cave and have a listen. Okay, we don't understand this reality because we're limited. We're deliberately limited because we're imprisoned. Our privileges of higher thought and understanding, intuition, etc., have been taken away from us. Bohm also adds that we view objects such as subatomic particles as separate from one another because we are only seeing a portion of their reality. Such particles are not separate parts, but facets of a deeper and more underlying unity that is ultimately as holographic and indivisible as the previously mentioned rows. And since everything in physical reality is comprised of these eidolons, the universe is itself a projection, a hologram. In addition to its phantom-like nature, such a universe would possess other, rather startling features. If the apparent separateness of subatomic particles is illusory, it means that at the deeper level of reality, all things in the universe are infinitely interconnected. We're all connected. Everything is connected. All of the ancient teachings teach us that, right? The electrons in the carbon atom in the human brain are connected to the subatomic particles that comprise every salmon that swims, every heart that beats, and every star that shimmers in the sky. Everything interpenetrates everything, and although human nature may seek to categorize and pigeonhole and subdivide the various phenomena of the universe, all apportionments are of necessity artificial, and all of nature is ultimately a seamless web. In a holographic universe, even time and space could no longer be viewed as fundamentals, because concepts such as location break down an universe in which nothing is truly separate from anything else. Time and three-dimensional space, like the images of the fish on the TV monitors, would also have to be viewed as projections of this deeper order. At its deeper level, reality is a sort of super hologram, in which the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. This suggests that given the proper tools, it might even be possible to someday reach into a super holographic level of reality and pluck out scenes from the long-forgotten past. What else the super hologram contains is an open-ended question. Allowing, for the sake of argument here, that a super hologram is the matrix that has given birth to everything in our universe, or at the very least, it contains every subatomic particle that has ever been or ever will be, every configuration of matter and energy that is possible, from snowflakes to quasars, from blue whales to gamma rays, it must be seen as a sort of cosmic storehouse of all that is. What does it sound like, guys? That's right, the Akashic Record. That's what it sounds like. All right? I believe the Akashic Record resides within the quantum foam from which all else springs, at least in this prison reality. Okay? Or, some people call the Akashic Record the collective unconscious. But it's very anthropomorphic. I like the Akashic Record better. Now, although Bohm concedes that we have no way of knowing what else might lie hidden in the super hologram, he does venture to say that we have no reason to assume it does not contain more. Or, as he puts it, perhaps Perhaps. The super holographic level of reality is a mere stage beyond which lies an infinity of further development. So I just want to just stay with that for just 1 second, if I may. We are in a prison. Again, that's where I'm starting from. That's my base, my foundation. That's the platform I'm running from. Yeah. Thank you for president. That would be the day. And it would be really very elegant if this reality, this multiverse that we find ourselves in, was in fact a super hologram, right? Easy to store, doesn't take up much space. And how do you escape a hologram? Right? We will get to the escape in due course. But as a prison, it's fantastic. It reminds me of the Superman movie. I think it's Superman 3. That was when Christopher Reeves? I'm going to say Christopher Reeves. When he was Superman, the villains from Krypton had been imprisoned sort of in this flat space, like almost like a holographic kind of mirror thingy. And then it breaks and they escape. Really interesting how you make these associations. I think it's Superman 3. Anyway, so yeah, it's the nature of the prison that has me baffled at this point. But we'll get to that. Karl Pribram. Bohm is not the only researcher who has found evidence that the universe is a hologram. Working independently, and this is important, in the field of brain research. Right. Bohm is a physicist, and Pribram is a neurophysiologist from Stanford. And he has also become persuaded of the holographic nature of reality. Karl Pribram. He was drawn to the holographic model by the puzzle of how and where memories are stored in the brain. For decades, numerous studies have shown that rather than being confined to a specific location, memories are in fact dispersed throughout the brain. They seem to be put together in a rather complex filing system whenever they're needed to be put together. In the 1960s, Pribram encountered the concept of holography and realized he had found the explanation brain scientists had been looking. Pribram believes memories are encoded not in neurons or small groupings of neurons, but in patterns of nerve impulses that crisscross the entire brain in the same way that patterns of laser light interference crisscross the entire area of a piece of film containing a holographic image. In other words, Pribram believes the brain is itself a hologram. Needless to say, it's on the fringes of neurophysiology. Pribram's theory also explains how the human brain can store so many memories in so little space. It has been estimated that the human brain has the capacity to memorize something on the order of 10 billion bits of information during the average human lifetime. 10 billion bits. That's a lot of information. One of the most amazing things about human thinking processes is that every piece of information seems instantly cross-correlated with every other piece of information. Another feature intrinsic to the hologram. Not just the hologram, but we'll get to that too. Because every portion of a hologram is infinitely interconnected with every other portion, it is perhaps nature's supreme example of a cross-related system. Think of the ultimate relational database. Completely cross-referenceable, instantaneous search functions, and no Boolean or other algebra needed to define those search functions at all. Just it's instantaneously cross-referenced. Phenomenal. That's our brain. The storage of memory is not the only neurophysiological puzzle that becomes more tractable in light of Pribram's holographic model of the brain. Another is how the brain is able to translate the avalanche of frequencies it receives via the senses, light frequencies, sound frequencies, etc., into the concrete world of our perceptions. Encoding and decoding frequencies is precisely what a hologram does best. Just as a hologram functions as a sort of lens, a translating device, able to convert an apparently meaningless blur of frequencies into a coherent image, Pripram believes the brain also comprises a lens and uses holographic principles to mathematically convert the frequencies it receives through the senses into the inner world of our perception. An impressive body of evidence suggests that the brain uses holographic principles to perform its operations. Pripram's theory, in fact, has gained increasing support among neurophysiologists, but it's still out there. It's a really interesting quote here from Karl Pripram I'm going to share with you. Karl Pripram reasons that the objective world doesn't exist, at least not in the way as we know it or as we see it. Out there, there are only waves and frequencies, which our brain converts for us into images, which make up our world. Our brain is responsible that we see things as we do. Pripram asserted that our brain is able to construct objects, and David Bohm even concluded that we construct space and time. If you haven't seen a little documentary called What the Bleep Do We Know, I highly recommend that you do. And go and watch the extended version. I think it's 3.5 hours. It's really very, it's done in a very entertaining way. It's not dry at all. It makes you laugh and smile. But you walk away, I think, with a deeper appreciation of the mystery of our universe and life in general. What the bleep do we know? So, if our brain constructs reality around us, it's our thoughts, really. It's our right? Thought forms matter, forms reality. That makes perfect sense from the prison aspect. Because ultimately the grayish, pinkish blob that is inside your skull, that is the true prison that holds us here. The brain seems to hold our essence. It seems to hold us here in this flesh and blood sack, supported, by rather inadequately, I might say, skeleton of, again, rather fragile bones, and why we have a soft, squishy covering rather than a hard carapace like a bug, I will never understand. But here we are. This is our lot, and we're born into it, over and over and over again, never quite escaping. Well, most of us, some have. Never quite figuring out how. And even when we do figure it out, and we'll get to that, it's hard. It is really, really hard to live the kind of life that would allow you an escape at the end of said life. Or maybe even during it. One thing I can suggest that you do, that voodoo that you do so well. No. The one thing I suggest that you do is practice meditation. You can. Mindfulness. What's mindfulness, Mackie? Mindfulness is being in the moment. If you're doing martial arts, you know what I'm talking about. Because if you're not in the moment, chances are you get clocked. Someone is going to clobber you in the head. You have to be present. It's this beautiful meme I saw recently. So I shouldn't say meme. It's a photo. It's a picture of a crowd. You don't know what the crowd is looking at. You only see the crowd, and almost every single person in the crowd is holding up their mobile phone to capture the moment, except for one little old lady. She's just looking. She's just in the moment, experiencing the moment. Everybody else is experiencing it through their phone, recording it for some posterity, I imagine. Why is beyond me. I also don't understand why we now take pictures of all our food. Before I had a phone, and before there was Facebook, I never took pictures of my food. And now I feel this, compulsion to share what I'm eating with anyone who wants to look at it. I'm sure there's something wrong with us. But yeah, so she was in the moment. She was experiencing. She was whatever, maybe a race, who knows what, right? But she was there. She was not seeing it through a filter. I mean, of course she was seeing it through a filter, but not, through a mobile phone. And that's what mindfulness is. You're there. You're in the moment. You're mindful of what's going on around you. You're breathing the air. You're feeling the wind. You're hearing the trees. You're hearing the birds. You understand what's going on around you. Your peripheral vision is acute. You are in the moment. A lot of us are not. A lot of us are not. We're not in the moment, right? Because we're worried about the future all the time, and then we worry about the past, right? Neither of which matter, because you only have the moment. The moment is missed. We completely miss the moment. And it's the moment that allows us to be somebody else, to do more and be more, right? But no. Oh, I made this mistake yesterday. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, no. How's they gonna? Oh, tomorrow I have to go to see my boss. Oh, no, what will see? And so between yesterday and tomorrow, you're forgetting today, and not just today, but right now. Right now. That's important. Another thing that would be good to do if you wanted to escape is to see how the perfecti lived in the Cathar religion. They were celibate, didn't have any earthly attachments. They were mostly vegetarian, maybe even vegan, for that matter. Didn't want for anything, only looked after their absolutely essential needs. And when I say looked after, hoped that somebody would help them fill them, which of course the vast majority of the Far population did, who weren't perfected. Only a few, could bring themselves, I guess, to be perfected. Very similar to begging monks. It's a negative connotation we give it, but these monks, usually in yellow or orange tunics or garbs, you see them walking around asking for handouts. That's pretty much the lifestyle. They have nothing. What you see on them, that's all they have. There's nothing else they have anywhere stashed away. So this is not a Catholic Church model, right? Where the money is hoarded to build yet another golden Jesus and another golden Mary. And if only. No, look, I don't know if you believe in Jesus or not, but let's say he was there. I would just love to have him look around Rome today. Walk around Rome. What do you think, Jesus? What do you reckon? Is this your teaching? Is this where we should be? Cathedrals, the gold, the sheer opulence. I mean, look at what the Pope is wearing. I mean, that's someone's salary, annual salary, what he's wearing there for his little ceremonial things. And that's real gold. You see him holding in it, on the frescoes and the art. That's gold. Those are jewels. It's a real thing. Catholic Church specifically has plundered the world, and in the process, made European royalty rich beyond belief as well. I mean, those guys work hand in hand. The parasites. Well, they're all parasites. But let me be more specific. The royals and the clergy worked very beautifully hand in hand to keep us dumb, ignorant, oppressed for hundreds of years in Europe, and then in the wider world when they got the chance, destroying elder cultures left, right, and center. So mindfulness is important. Not having any earthly possessions or attachments is important if you want to get out of here, because none of this is real. Well, it is real, but only in the context of this reality. And ask yourself truly, what do you really ever experience in the world? I mentioned last time that we never really ever touch anything, which is true. But what you're feeling is the repulsive forces of the atoms, the materials that make up the world. We never actually really touch anyone or anything. We can't. It's not possible. Physically not possible. In fact, when you're walking, you're not really walking, you're floating. Now, it feels like walking, but you're actually walking, you're floating over the ground, ever so imperceptibly. There's a link in the chat. I haven't clicked it, comment, but will after the show is out. So have a look then. But yeah, so you never really touch anything. So what can you trust then as far as information is concerned? Looking at reality. Okay, your eyes. Okay, you trust. Okay, your eyes are directly connected to your brain. Okay, that's fine, but only a certain frequency bandwidth is coming in, what we call the visible spectrum. That's all that your eyes can perceive. It's a very limited spectrum if you look at the entire electromagnetic band. It's very, very limited. So we only have what we call visible light. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. So we don't see everything for starters. But even of the things we see, we have a filter. Right? We don't see everything. Our brain wouldn't be able to handle every input that our eyes get. This wouldn't happen. I mean, we'd just be overwhelmed. And that's what autistic people, I understand, experience. No filter. For them, every sensory input comes through. Yeah, comes through. Boom. And it's overwhelming, obviously. So, and you've all seen the gorilla experiment that walks through these people passing a ball. So we have to focus. In order to function, we focus. Now we're good because the eyes that we have, they look forward. So already, we are probably, I want to say we're missing out on at least 180 degrees of vision, probably more, right? Maybe 220, maybe 230 degrees, depending. I mean, our peripheral vision is really very accurate for motion because that's where the predators come from, right? But really looking at the world is right in front of us. 2 eyes, bifocal, right? And again, that's determined by our biology. Why we do it? But so we only see half of what we could see anyway, for starters. But we see a lot less because a lot of it is filtered out because of our expectations and the focus that we have, and etc., etc., etc. So you can't trust your eyes. That's my point. Okay, what about sound? Sound is very similar. Right? We have difficulty to distinguish sounds, especially if there's a cacophony of sound around us. We have to listen very carefully, and a lot of animals around us have a much better auditory system than we do. So the sound is no good as a source of truth. All right, well, maybe touch. How about touch? Or hands or skin? Essentially, skin. Let's talk about our skin. Our skin can distinguish hot and cold, but only up to a point. Only up to a point. Once we reach a certain level of cold or a certain level of heat, it feels the same. It feels the same. There's no difference. We can certainly feel shapes. Sure, we can do that. We can feel shapes. Our hands are pretty good. And if you're blind, then you're really, really good at it. Right? Because your other senses compensate for the senses that you lose. But still, it's not really an ideal way to learn about the world because it's very limited as far as our reach is concerned. So touch and feel, very limited, and also not completely trustworthy because we can't really make any judgments except for, well, we know the rough shape of it, we know the rough temperature if it isn't burning or freezing us. Again, same to our body, no difference there. Okay, then taste and smell. How about that? Well, taste, you really only taste a very limited number of things. You taste salty, right, and hot, sour, bitter, okay, and that's pretty much it. Sweet, sorry, that's it. These are the fundamental things you can taste. What you think you taste is actually coming through your olfactory senses, your smell. So all these finer nuances like cinnamon, or jalapeno, the smokiness of the jalapenos, or whatever, chicken salt, and all that stuff, right? Where there's aroma and flavor, tea, coffee, that's all smell. Your tongue can't taste it. It's coming in through your nose. And if you lose your sense of smell, there goes a whole bunch of your taste as well. Okay? So But even that can be confused and overwhelmed. And again, our senses aren't the best out there. So we have a limited input from the world around us, if in fact it really is out there. And then we can't really trust it either. Because you could give your brain direct inputs, via electrical stimulation or otherwise, to mimic the sensory inputs that your sensory organs perceive. And it wouldn't be any difference to you. There'd be no difference to you whatsoever. Okay? You would just perceive it as you are perceiving reality as you think right now. But you could right now be floating, your brain could be floating in a vat, in a saline solution. And you wouldn't know any better, as long as the sensory inputs were fed into your brain. Now, you might not even be a brain. Maybe you're just a collection of electrons, in a little black box that has the illusion of being a person. The point is we don't know. But things are pointing in this direction, right? Science is now pointing to our reality not being as real as we think it is, because there are too many things that don't make sense. And I maintain that we are in a prison. And I don't think we are meant to be here. And I don't think we want to be here. And I also don't think we should be here. And the parasites do whatever they can to keep us here. Now, the parasites are not the ultimate originators of this prison. In my opinion, the parasites are simply fellow prisoners that have figured out a way not to die, not to forget your memories, and make the most of this prison world. Right? Similar to the guy in the Matrix that wanted to be put back to be a famous actor, and he liked the steak, and all that. They've become institutionalized, because if you stay here long enough and you actually don't die and you don't forget everything and you keep all your memories, then you would be terrified of what's out there, the real reality, our true home, where we don't have the limitations that we experience here, right? Where we are truly free to explore the metaverse, the higher dimensions, whatever they're like. I don't know. I can't really remember. There are feelings, I'll be honest with you. I had this dream once, this very vivid dream. And as I stepped out of this building, because I had this dream was I was running along a corridor in my school in Germany, my old school, funny enough. And the corridor was dark, and I was running through these glass doors, one after the other. The linoleum floor was sort of reflecting the outside light. It was a bit dark, and I was just running until I came to like a foyer, and then I was that was the outside world. And again, through glass doors, like you see in the schools, I guess, down the stairs, into the world. Beautiful, bright, sunny day. Sort of a country road. It wasn't a sealed road, and two workmen with puffy heads and striped coveralls working next to a really funny-looking truck and scratching their head. And I have never felt so real in my life as I did in that dream. I could feel, taste, smell, hear everything. I felt the sun on my face. I could smell the air. Everything felt phenomenally real. Now, I don't normally remember my dreams. I really don't. I'm not a lucid dreamer. But I remember that dream. And it felt real. And you know what else? It felt like home. It felt like the feeling of being there. I got maybe the gravity, the wind, the sun, whatever it was, the entire ambience of the place felt like home. Can't explain it another way. Right? So, and more real than this place. That's my point. If that's possible. That sounds crazy, right? But when I was there, my dream, I felt at ease. I felt at peace. And I felt full of energy. And every breath I took energized me. I thought, yeah, I'm home. Then I woke up. It was the strangest experience, I'll be honest with you. But yeah, so what is it like out there? I don't know. Maybe it's like that. Maybe all of us interpret it differently. I don't know. And I think once we have these limitations removed, maybe that's what happens. Maybe you just interpret it the way that is right for you. Maybe you find your home, whatever that is. Right? We are all forced to live in the same world here, in the same reality. And maybe the real reality is not like that at all. Maybe that it's like, well, make your own adventure, possibly. I can't conceive of higher dimensions necessarily, or how we would move through them, or not move, as it were, or experience them, right? What senses we would have available to ourselves. It's it's really quite mind-blowing if you contemplate the fact that this could very well be a prison that is limiting our ability to perceive reality in its most vibrant and engaging form. Oh, there's the music. Now don't go away. Mitchell Bubb is coming up with the best yeehaw in the business. Donate if you can. And if you like Plato's Cave, come and find me on YouTube. And come back on Thursday. It's now 11 p.m. Australian time because of the time changes. Peace out.